Let's see here. Okay, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. Welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. We're here live, and we have a battle briefing. But first, we would like to issue our comments to the Chicken Little Trads.
Yes.
So Ryan, what do you have to say to the Chicken Little Trads?
John, I have to, as you know, the hosts of this show, Ryan the Retrograde and John the Son of Thunder, we are 99.5% correct in our opinions, okay? But there is that 0.5% where we're wrong. And in this case, I have to, so to speak, eat crow, which means, for those of you who happen to be from Rio Linda, that means say I was wrong. And so I'm going to eat crow here. These are crow-flavored Doritos. And I'm going to issue an apology to all the Chicken Little Trads and our viewers. Take a drink of water. To wash down my crow-flavored Doritos. I apologize to all the Chicken Little Trads and the Doom Trads because people like Rorate Caeli and Return to Tradition, you were right. You were expecting the motu proprio Pope Francis to cancel the Latin Mass, and you were right. So now, as John, as you said in the pre-show, the highly rated pre-show, which, ladies and gentlemen, if you subscribe at the super duper unobtainium level of $10,000 a month, you'll get access to that pre-show. But as John and I were talking in the pre-show, okay, give them credit, but you know they've been predicting that there was going to be a cancellation of the Latin Mass for like 7 years. So okay, they got something right. But you know, I have to give credit to Rorate Caeli again. Like the first 10 minutes of the Bergoglian pontificate, Rorate Caeli denounced him as a modernist, and they said he was going to be a destroyer. And I was upset, and I was like, this is so pessimistic, this is doomish, you know, Chicken Little-ish. But they were right. It took everybody else 2 to 3 years to figure out that the guy was a farce and a hoax, and they told us 10 minutes in. So anyway, that's the mea culpa here.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, we can make all these predictions like, oh, you know, the Latin Mass will face further restrictions within the next 20 years. Like, I don't know. So that's why I generally try to stay away from predictions. I'm one of the people I say be prepared for, you know, some of the worst situations. And over the past two years, year and a half, I mean, we've seen a lot of those situations like that I never ever expected, and I didn't really even plan for.
Yeah.
And so now you know that you can plan for certain things. So maybe there will be another shutdown, but who knows? But you can plan for it.
Yeah, in the last 3 years, let's go through everything. You had, well, a Morris, but I don't know. There's the filial correction, the accusation of heresy, the cancellation of the Mass completely. This motu proprio thing. I never thought they would cancel the Mass, shut down the whole world, that Bergoglio would try to cancel the Latin Mass. He was accused of heresy. Oh, and then Burke issued the dubia, and then he never answered it. And then Burke said, well, we'll follow it up. And he never followed it up. So this is just totally, everything we're in now is uncharted waters. I have no idea. Yeah. Nobody knows what's going on because there could be another shutdown coming. It's crazy out there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we do have a battle briefing. The last week has been pretty interesting.
But before we get to that, I want to tell everybody that I have been in contact with Parent Ryan. I know he's been missing, and people have been wondering where he is. The last I saw him, he was smashing his cell phone with a sledgehammer and wiping his hard drive. Now, I said, why are you doing this? I said, are you worried about the whole grinder priest thing? Because in your order, the Jesuits, you'll be promoted if they find out you have a grinder profile, okay? I know, I don't even know what order, how high up he is in the Jesuits, but I'm telling you, if they find out he was on Grindr, he'll be a cardinal. He'll be undersecretary to Cocoa Puffs, Coco Palmiero or whatever. But anyway, so I was talking to him and we had a conversation. I said, you know what, Parent Ryan, I think I need to get with the times and finally embrace the LGBTQRSIA plus agenda. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to come out of the closet and tell you I am pro LGBTQRSIA plus. Now, before you turn off and denounce us and everything else and say we're fake trads, let me tell you what those letters mean, okay? You might want to write this down. L is for, by the way, this is the rainbow spectrum, let's call it, of traditionalism. All right, this is my take on Parent Ryan's acronyms. So in this rainbow spectrum, we have L for a Lefebvrist, who is somebody who's an SSPX aficionado. G is for a general trad or a general traditionalist. And this would be, you know, if you go to Fraternity of St. Peter, Institute, Christ the King, something like that. B is if you are bi-ritual, okay? And that would be somebody like Peter the Byzantine, our friend. He's bi-ritual. He goes to both the Byzantine Divine Liturgy and the traditional Latin Mass. T is for trans-ritual. And that is somebody who's assigned one rite at baptism, but then switches later. And by the way, I know a priest who was born a Roman and baptized, and then after the craziness of Vatican II, he switched Byzantine and then became a Byzantine Catholic priest. So that's the T. That's trans ritual.
Yeah, and I know a priest and a deacon who did that. Probably different than the ones you know.
Well, isn't Deacon Tony? He is trans ritual, right? Because he was a Roman, yes. Yeah. And there was a priest that was on Matt Fradd's show, and he's trans ritual. He was born and baptized Roman, and then he went to a Byzantine when he was 17, and he basically converted on the spot and, you know, changed rites. He transitioned to the East. Back to the acronym. Q. This is for questioning. You're questioning whether Bergoglio is the Pope or not, okay? And this is where I think a lot of trads are. I have to say myself included, is I'm questioning this Bergoglio. Is he Pope? Is he not? Vatican II? What in the world is going on? As I said before we got into this rainbow acronym, nobody has any idea what's going on. The Pope canceled the Mass effectively. You know, the rainbow agenda rules. James Martin is like a big dude in the Vatican. You have the Grindr priest who still has his faculties, but Father Altman doesn't. There's a lot of questions out there. And in the spirit of the Bergoglian pontificate, where you're allowed to ask questions and we should discernment and whatever, I can tell you that I'm questioning, and I'll leave it at that. Maybe someday we'll talk about that on this show. Next letter in the acronym, R, for resistance, and that's SSPX resistance, Bishop Williamson and some of his associate bishops and priests there. S, for sedevacantists, of all flavors, whatever you might be. We're all in this battle of resistance against the forces of Bergoglio together. I is for indult, and that would be a diocesan Latin Mass. A is for an ally. There's a lot of allies. We have allies in the Novus Ordo, you know. As we talked about this, I think this past Sunday or the past week, there are a ton of people, thanks be to God, who have never been to a Latin Mass before in their life. They don't know anything about it, but they just saw that Bergoglio hates it, and they have a sensus catholicus, a sensus fidelium, and they think to themselves, well, if Bergoglio hates it, it must be Catholic. And so they started to show up to the Latin Mass, where they're doing pro-Latin Mass arguments and whatnot in papers. And these remarks have come from a lot of places. Just look at the letter of Bishop Rob Mustarts from Netherlands, who said, I've never celebrated a Latin Mass in my life, but he went out there and ripped on the motu proprio and Bergoglio and said he was, said stuff stronger than I've ever said, ever. I don't know, maybe in offline I've said some stuff that's stronger than that, but Bishop Mustert's is, to use a word that the young people like to say, he's based in terms of his commentary. So he's an ally, and there's a lot of allies like that. And then, of course, there's a plus because who knows? There's all sorts of opinions and whatnot. But anyway, so that's I've been converted to the LGBTQRSIA plus agenda, but not Parent Riot's version of it. Okay. So are you ready? Are you ready, Major John, for your battle briefing? An update on the Second Great Liturgical War.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get started.
Here we go. This was reported, I think you did a live stream on this earlier in the week, that the air war is hot. We saw Archbishop Gullikson was in the air, about ready to bomb, so to speak, Washington, D.C. and the National Shrine for that Assumption Mass. But Cardinal, he's a cardinal. Cardinal Gregory scrambled his fighters, and he fired some missiles and basically shot down Gullikson. So Gullikson had to eject, and he can't say the Latin Mass is canceled in D.C. for Assumption, Vigil of the Assumption. It's not happening. My question is, are the bad guys going to inadvertently turn the traditional Latin Mass into a Berlin Wall moment, where you see the images, you rally people, it's a very peaceful thing with lots of hugs and people popping champagne corks and whatnot, and the Bergoglians look like aggressors. It came to my mind about the singing revolution of the Estonian independence movement, where the people rallied around this cultural identity in order to throw off the shackles of the Soviet regime. And I think that this is all part of point 4, which I discussed in our first video last week, the propaganda war. We have to rally around our Catholic identity, and that is the Latin Mass. We have to use that as a battering ram to defeat the forces of the modernists, the Novus Ordo regime, the Bergoglian regime. I want to remind everybody, this is part of your battle orders. Listen carefully. Major Ryan issues an order that if you are able, within driving distance of Philadelphia on August 15th, they are still doing their solemn high, I think it's a pontifical, I'm not sure, Mass of the Assumption, 3:30 in the afternoon at the cathedral in Philadelphia. I want that place to be packed, standing room only. I want there to be like 200 people outside pushing and to get in and like standing on the steps. This is an opportunity, my fellow soldiers. This is an opportunity to show the Bergoglians who, what the Catholic faith is, and to really, to really let this be a propaganda moment, okay? To beseech heaven to restore the Latin Mass as the sole form of worship in the Catholic Church. Because remember, our Shahada is, there is one Roman rite, and St. Pius V is its messenger. Say that every day. But this is our opportunity to spread the faith, so to speak. And yeah, and definitely to spread Catholicism. There will be a lot of normies there. There will be a lot of allies there. There will be a lot of the plus marks from the acronym there. And I want everybody to show up there and hype and have a good time, talk to strangers. And as Taylor Marshall has said this past, I think it was this past week, the goal is we want to double Latin Mass attendance by Christmas. And the way you do that is by everybody inviting 5 people. If you invite 5 people, you'll probably get 25% of those people, or 50% of them, somewhere between less than 50%, will actually show up to the Latin Mass. And if you do that, then you'll have doubled, at least doubled the attendance by Christmas. So everybody do that.
Yeah, if you bring one friend, that's going to double the attendance.
That's not hard. That's all it takes, you know?
Well, it can be. It's not always easy.
It depends on who, you know, how many friends you have. Are they Catholic? But even if they're Protestants, Jews, Muslims,
Yeah.
atheists, Buddhists, Hindus, doesn't matter. It does not matter. Just say, hey, come show up. You don't, I don't, wherever you believe anything, it's basically like a concert or a play if you're an atheist or whatever. But show up. Just show up. And you'll meet some people and have breakfast afterwards or whatever.
Yeah, see what it's all about. And you mentioned interesting because Pope Francis is about building bridges, not walls.
Yes.
And and so I wouldn't say, Mr. Francis, tear down this wall.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, are you ready for now the classified briefing to the ground forces from Major Ryan's about to give his classified briefing to the ground forces. Are you ready, Major John?
Sure.
Here we go. Let me close this PowerPoint. Okay, here it is. Second Great Liturgical War. This is the battle plan classified at secret level. This is my strategic briefing for the ground war. That's mid-level officers. That is parish priests. So all you lay people, I want you to take this information, write it down, and digest it and pass this on to parish priests. They are basically like the colonels in this ground war. Here we go. Point 1. Priests must continue to celebrate the Old Mass as much as possible, even if it has to be a private Mass. So if you happen to be in a diocese or a parish or whatever, your priest, the bishop has shut him down or said, oh, you can only say Mass on the first Tuesday, after the first Monday, after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox, but only on years that are divisible by 2 or something. Okay, if he said something like that, continue, O Father, to celebrate the Old Mass, even if it's private, as often as possible. That's point 1. Point 2, familiarize yourself with the definition of a private Mass according to canon law, keeping in mind that canon law has one definition of a private Mass, while the Mass rubrics have about 6 other definitions of a private Mass, according to the O'Connell book. Now, in the context of canon law, I tried to look this up, but I'm not even sure if it's technically in canon law what is a private Mass, because it says that every worship of every liturgy of the church is actually a public action. So by law, you really can't exclude lay people from participating in any Mass. And this is why the virus shutdown that they did was a crime. I had sent to you and Brett this past week a article from, I think it's the blog Canon Law Made Easy by, I think the canon lawyer is Kathy Caridi, and she raised canonical points that the Mass shutdown that we experienced last year was illegal, that bishops had no authority to do that. And so that they abused the idea of like a private Mass or whatever. But anyway, that's beyond the point. So let's go to, what are your priests supposed to do? Let's just talk about this so-called private Mass. Colloquially, that is a Mass that is not published in a bulletin or not announced beforehand from the pulpit. So that's the definition of a private Mass that most dioceses work with. Point 2, subpoint 2, the location ought to be in a church or chapel, but if circumstances require, it can be in a private chapel, which could be in your basement or a shack in the woods or whatever. Subpoint 3, this is important. There is no restriction at all about people attending private Masses, because the laity have a right to assist at any Mass they happen to discover. That is what was in the canon law blog, okay? And she cited canons that are in there. Again, no mass is purely private. Even a mass on a cruise ship or in a priest's private hotel room, or let's say in an airport, okay, if a priest's in a side room saying mass. If somebody discovers that, by canon law, they are allowed to stand there, kneel, and participate in that mass. Okay? And so there's no restrictions about people attending a private mass.
Wow.
Keep that in mind. Subpoint 4. A private mass can be a missa cantata or even a solemn high mass. The external solemnity does not affect its status as private. With that in mind, it is obvious that announcing such a private mass to the ministers, servers, and schola is required ahead of time so that they can prepare. So if you're going to have a private solemn high mass, obviously people need to know ahead of time so they can practice and show up, okay? So, and yet it's still a private mass because it's not published from the pulpit or in the church bulletin, okay? One example of this, now if anybody questions, just consider this for a minute. Let's think about wedding masses and funeral masses. These are perfect examples of these sorts of private masses. They are all, for the most part, they are not published in the bulletin or announced from the pulpit ahead of time, but they happen in the church, and the word about them is spread by word of mouth or by text message or phone call or whatever, invitations, and the people show up who are supposed to show up. I mean, if you happen to stumble upon a wedding mass, there's no bouncer who's going to kick you out, no. But you're really not invited, and but whatever, okay, well, who cares? You know, you're not going to go up there and just do a liturgical dance or whatever. But I'm just pointing out that this is an example. That's a true example of a private mass, is the wedding mass. So point 5, advertise these private masses by word of mouth. Never write anything down. This continues to keep it a private mass. Now, my question for priests, are you, and this is something I don't know, are you priests, are you pastors required to have public mass each day in your parish? What if you announced a schedule change and decided to only have public daily masses on Tuesday and Thursday, and then decided to do private masses in the traditional Roman rite on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday? Is that licit? I don't know. Another question for priests. Are you allowed to binate on a weekday? Because if so, you could celebrate a public Novus Ordo Mass at the usually scheduled time, and then at some other time during the day, celebrate a private Old Mass. And again, people could show up to that if they happen to know the secret password, or they just happen to stumble upon it by, you know, randomly going into the church to pray a rosary or whatever. And, oh, well, there's a mass going on. I guess I'll assist.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm actually, like, you know, a lot of this stuff is new to me. You know, like I've never heard it before. I read one of your links, the Canon Law Made Easy, about wearing the things over your face, but yeah, but I posted that in the video notes, or in the show notes here on live chat. But yeah, I've never heard some of this stuff before, and I know that a lot of priests are allowed, they are permitted to say 2 masses in one day by their bishop, because if you have a daily mass and then a funeral mass on the same day, and yeah, I give them permission.
It's my understanding that in my diocese, in a secret undisclosed location at a diocese in Pennsylvania, that our priests have blanket permission to binate on weekdays and trinate on Sundays.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I would imagine that's the case in most dioceses.
Probably, yeah. And they might even have blanket permission to do more than that on Sundays in other dioceses, because, you know, they're so... I mean, in my diocese, there's actually one priest that has 4. He's responsible for 4 parishes. I don't know how, if he says mass at every one of those on a weekend or what. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I know that there's a few situations like that I'm aware of as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, you have 4 parishes, like, yeah.
That's going to be a problem. If you've got 4 parishes, you're probably not going to be able to do a Latin Mass on Sundays, but somebody will. You have to understand, if you're a priest in a Novus Ordo, a lot of times your hands are bound. On weekdays, you're more free, but hopefully within an hour or two of everybody driving, they have access to an old Mass so that they can get to that on Sundays.
Yeah.
So here's my marching orders. Brothers in the war, these are your marching orders. And this is for lay people and priests as well. Priests must continue to evangelize each other and encourage each other to learn the old Mass. Priests who know the old Mass have to hype it up. They have to keep up the propaganda going. They have to train other priests and continue to celebrate the Mass as often as possible privately, and then arrange for private Masses. And that's where we laity come in, because we can push this envelope. A priest who says the old Mass, you go up to him and say, Father, me and these other families, we would really like you to celebrate a private Mass on this day, because it's the feast of, well, let's say today's St. Dominic, and that's my confirmation name. Or, Saturday is St. Cajetan, and I have a devotion to him, and whatever. And present to him, we'd like to have this Mass. If, I don't know whether the bishop allowed it or not, but let's at least do it privately. Let's do it in this, whatever the location might be, a chapel out of the way. If somebody has a chapel in their attic or basement. Just keep up the pressure on priests. You just demand and say, we want the traditional Latin Mass. We won't take no for an answer. And I think that if you keep, as the gospel says, if you're like the woman who is asking the judge for justice, and she just keeps badgering him every day, he finally will rule in her case. Or if you're the I think it's the woman who, or neighbor or whatever, who goes and knocks at the neighbor's door and says, I don't know what he's asking for, give me something. And you just keep knocking, and finally the guy's going to open up the door and give you what you want to go away. So let's keep knocking. We need to keep knocking at priest doors and saying, give us the traditional Latin Mass. And priests, you have to keep knocking at other priest doors and say, hey, dude, the Latin Mass, the traditional Latin Mass is the best thing ever. And, let me teach it to you. So, to conclude this battle briefing, the quotation, another motto we have from Archabbot Boniface Wimmer is forward, always forward, everywhere forward. This Latin Mass movement, the traditional Catholic movement, is forward, always forward, everywhere forward. If there ever is a retreat, it's to regroup and reinforce, to launch a counterattack. And that's what we're doing right now. Although some places might have their Masses canceled or restricted or whatever, you continue to push point 4, which is the propaganda narrative everywhere on the internet, to priests, to laity, have your private Masses, pray your rosaries, do your fastings. Rosary in Latin is a good thing. One thing that you're doing, do that in a parish. Just push this. If you can't get permission to do Latin Mass in your parish or whatever, go in there with 2 or 3 friends and pray the old breviary in Latin, okay, publicly, out loud. And if you know how to chant it, sing the thing, okay, that's even better. And if you get to a point where you know it well and have a couple people, well, then you can invite people, they'll show up. And they'll be like, wow, this traditional Latin liturgy is great. Why can't we have that? There's all sorts of ways to get people into this battle. And Bergoglio has given us an opportunity to start thinking outside the box and do this. And so that's my summary. So I don't know if there's any questions, or you have any questions or comments about that.
Well, I have some comments, because I know priests can be hesitant to evangelize to other priests, in my experience. And that's where we come in. Like we say, we are the laity, we will not be silent.
Yeah.
Well, now it's time to speak up, and we have a voice stronger than what you might expect, especially with the good priests. The good priests see the faith of the people, and that's what they see first, like the faith and devotion. So even if they don't say the old mass, they see the devotion that the people have. So whether we pray the rosary every day, read the Bible, we just talk about how we love reverent liturgy and church history, all that kind of stuff. And so if you know a priest who does not say the old mass but is a good priest, invite them, tell them, talk to them about it. Talk to them about the old mass, and because maybe some of their priest friends might be hesitant to talk about that, to talk about the old mass, especially now that this motu proprio came out. So, because it's a little bit challenging for me, I'm removed from Novus Ordo world.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. But anytime I see any kind of religious person, I talk about the Catholic faith. Religious or just a lay person, but even particularly religious, I say, oh yeah, like I attend the Latin Mass and it's really awesome, and it's great to have the church tradition and everything. I'm really enthusiastic about it, and you can tell right away whether or not they're like, oh, okay. But and I've talked to Byzantines, priests and deacons about the Latin Mass, and they're very intrigued.
Oh, are they?
Yes, because these are like, you can tell if they're a good like Catholic, because they're like, oh, that's really interesting. I like to attend one sometime. But obviously with their schedules and everything,
it's harder,
maybe a little bit difficult. But
yeah.
But no, I mean, you talk to these people of faith, and you're just enthusiastic about it. And that's why I think this documentary, you've heard about this documentary coming out, Mass of the Ages?
Yeah.
This is going to premiere on YouTube, and I might actually want to do a separate video on it.
That's a good idea, yeah.
But I haven't seen it, but based on the preview, I know of a lot of the people in the video. If I haven't met them personally, although there's one Institute of Christ the King priest that I believe I did meet, and he's in that video, and I was very impressed, because I was like, wow, yes, I know who that is. I've met him, so I was really excited. And Father Dave Nix is in there.
Oh, is he? Great.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other familiar faces. I mean, the trad world's not very big.
Yeah, everybody kind of. It's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Although I think in the trad world, it's probably like the 2 degrees of Peter Kwasniewski or whatever.
All right. Well, we have. Oh,
wait a minute! Before you
okay.
get into that question, I typed into you the private chat there. Reverent New Mass. Now, see, neither you nor I attend the new Mass, but let's say there are viewers. I mean, obviously, if you belong to a diocesan parish or whatever, your priest there says the new Mass most of the time. So you can say to him, hey, look, this is an opportunity that according to this motu proprio of Bergoglio, it talks about, well, you don't need the traditional Mass. You can do everything you want to do in the new Mass. And I think it's pointing towards like ad orientem, communion on the tongue, Latin or whatever. If that's what, if you believe, if Bergoglio even believes the words that he's saying or writing, then what you need to do is tell a priest and tell people who go to the new Mass, hey, this is an opportunity to make your new Mass look like the old, okay? So why don't you priests start doing a 1 or 2 masses, even a mass on Sunday or a mass during the week, new Mass ad orientem in Latin with Gregorian chant, with no altar girls, with communion on the tongue, kneeling, with no hand communion. Okay, just do it. If Bergoglio said, just do it, okay? And let this be an opportunity. Now, again, like I said, you and I don't go to the new Mass, but I'm sure that there's some viewers who do. So this is another part of the propaganda war. If they're giving us, if they've let their guard down, the Novus Ordo has let its guard down, and you can hit punches, liver shots or kidney shots or whatever, then get them, okay? And it might not be us throwing the punches, but somebody should throw those punches.
Yeah, and my sister, she said that in her diocese, there was a priest who started saying Mass ad Orientem for one of his Sunday Masses, and it grew so much that he added a second ad Orientem Mass on Sundays.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people just want reverence, whether it's the Novus Ordo or the Latin Mass. I mean, for me, preferably the Latin Mass, but if you give me a reverent Novus Ordo, I mean, I don't think I'd shun it, you know? Like, it's definitely worth consideration. So,
yeah, I think a lot of people years ago, I don't know where you are, where our viewers are in terms of what anything like that, but you know, years ago, I would have preferred, I would have taken that Latin Novus Ordo without all the abuses and whatnot. So, you know, let that be that's an opportunity there if you feel called to do that or help out with it.
Yeah, if you can handle it. All right, I want to get to Patty's comment here. Patty, our friend from Northern Ireland. All right. Did you see the new table in St. Peter's? He's really pushing his luck.
Yeah.
So the table. Let me actually take a look here. Did you get a chance to see that, Ryan?
I saw Taylor Marshall did a show about it, and
oh, he did.
Yeah, maybe I watched it for 5 minutes, but I'm like, how can you talk for a half hour about a Luther table? I mean, really, just maybe he'll pay Alexander Chugwell money, and Chugwell and his buddy will go and grab that Luther table and throw it in the Tiber River. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, I'm trying to find a photo here, because there was some interesting symbolism in that St. Peter's Basilica table. I think Ed Penton had something.
Oh, did he? Okay. Well, what Taylor Marshall pointed out is he said, okay, it's got this upside down cross on it, which could be St. Peter's cross. I don't know, but why is it St. Peter's cross? I don't know. It's at the St. Joseph's altar. Also, that's the altar of St. Simon and Jude. And so why is St. Peter's cross there? I don't know. And it's outside the altar rail. So it's just, this is what happens with the liturgical revolutionaries is you see a complete change in everything, change in the orientation, a change in language, ritual, emphasis, everything. So they can't even use the same altar. They've got to turn around and put this Luther table out front there and have the Mass facing the people in the vernacular. There it is.
Oh, right here?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Can you zoom in on that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
This is the free version of StreamYard, by the way, if you couldn't tell, with the StreamYard logo in the corner.
Yeah.
So, so no, I can't really zoom in on this from what I know with my limited experience here, but yeah, that's it. So
okay.
It looks very out of place, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, if that was your local parish, you'd probably be happy with that. But it's St. Peter's, and so you went from it being super duper beautiful to having a wooden Luther table there.
Next week, Pachamama will be on the table.
Probably, yeah.
That's Patty's comment here, and
yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm a little more optimistic than that. Might take a little while. I'll make my Chicken Little Trad prediction. There'll be Pachamamas. No, really, when there's Pachamamas on the altar, then we'll say, okay, apostasy, and move on. And
well, how long before you see a Pachamama on the altar in the Vatican? I'm gonna say 12 months. I'm giving it 12 months.
I would say it's unlikely. I think there would be some other, what would be more likely would be a different statue like Buddha or like a Jewish or Muslim statue. I think they realized that they overstepped their they really kind of went out on a limb, and EWTN was kind of on top of that too. They weren't very happy about what was going on. Some of them were pretty surprised, and their coverage reflected that.
Yeah.
So EWTN, you don't want EWTN against you.
No, well, I mean, this is what's happened with the motu proprio is the normies are getting red pilled. Okay, and as I said, they're turning into allies or something, you know, in the LGBT whatever it is acronym. And I was going to make one more remark about that. Oh, I think that the next big thing for the Bergoglians would be, you saw that he wants to give communion to Protestants. I think that's going to be the next big thing that they're going to push. Is apparently he's going to have a synod, and they're going to talk about this. And I don't know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you give communion to Protestants, again, it's another sacrilege, and we've already had infinite numbers of sacrileges, from just base hand communion to communion for Joe Biden to communion in plastic bags during the virus, and now if you're going to give it to Protestants,
Well, here's the thing, though. He's moving really fast. Pope Francis is moving really fast right now.
yeah,
With the communion to Protestants thing, and I'll probably talk about that maybe a little more in a later show. But I don't know. You mentioned a synod. Well, he has a synod scheduled for synodality for the next like 3 years.
yeah.
A synod on synodality. So you have the diocesan level, which we should try to get into that. I think they're going to have that in September. So we should try to get into our diocese and let our voices be heard. I don't know that we would have too much of a chance of getting in there because we're not.
Well, how do they decide? Infiltrate the thing. Wear a rainbow flag T-shirt or whatever and infiltrate.
Yeah, and then you could just like go all out in favor of the Catholic faith. And then it's diocesan, then nationwide, so like the USCCB and other bishops' conferences, and then it's going to be at the Vatican. It's like a 3-year plan, but it seems like with the pace that they're moving at now, who knows if that would be expedited or what? Because Pope Francis' successor, he's not going to be like Pope Francis, whether that's good or bad. But
yeah, he could be 10 times more wacky liberal, or he could be a rad trad. You honestly have no idea what the Cardinals are going to do.
I think he'll be weird in a different way, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but that could be soon. I mean, it could be sooner rather than later. Like we might not get through the 3-year synodal plan. You know?
Yeah.
So it could be like the Second Vatican Council, where John the 23rd died in the middle of the council, and so they need to appoint a successor. And who knows? At that point, everything is up in the air. So, but you mentioned a synod about communion to Protestants. I want to see how this develops. I'd be curious to see, what more information is released on that, because again, this is sort of a rumor from Marco Tosatti, an Italian journalist.
Yeah,
he's very good. I think he's close to Vigano. I don't know, but
I'm not sure who. There's a couple guys there there's I was going to say Salvini, not him. There's Tosatti, there's Roberto De Mattei, and then there's another guy, and I always get them confused.
Yeah, no, I see a comment here from Patty. Thanks for commenting. Everyone, thanks for commenting. They said that Buddha made it onto the Tabernacle in Assisi, so there you go.
Yeah,
it's
Buddha made an appearance.
Yeah, not out of the realm of possibility. And this was Pope John Paul II.
Yeah, so I could
anti-Catholic,
Yeah, I could see a Buddha making another appearance in the Vatican, but you'd have to have some kind of ecumenical event to get that to happen, because just like the only reason Pachamama showed up was because they were doing the Amazonian Synod, and Buddha showed up in an ecumenical event. If you're going to get some other idol or whatever, you need an excuse. So maybe if the Germans show up, the German Protestants, they'll bring a rainbow flag with them, and that could show up at St. Peter's. That's
if they put that on the altar.
Well, I don't think they'd put it on the altar, but they might process with it in. Or
even if they do that, you can pick your side at that point. Like that would be, because we've been saying, what's going to be the point where the Catholics, the Novus Ordo mainstreams, wake up and say, hey, this is ridiculous. Where's the point where they're going to say this is definitively anti-Catholic? And if you didn't wake up at the Amazon Synod, some of them didn't, because some of them don't really pay attention.
Yeah.
But if you have a rainbow flag, you're going to say, all right, so what do we stand for at this point?
Yeah,
And
that could be a good question. If there's any, if we have any viewers who are sort of mainstreamers or know people who are mainstream, ask them and say, like, present some possibilities. What if the Pope says it's okay for Protestants to get communion? Do you think that's too far? What if somebody brings a rainbow flag into the Vatican? What if they put a Buddha on the altar? What if they put a Pachamama on the altar? What if they have, she deacons? Go through these possibilities and say, when do you think that this is a false church, or it's jumped the shark, or however you might want to say?
Well, I think the communion for Protestants will certainly be a dividing line, because if you don't believe in the real presence, you're not Catholic.
Yeah, so, but that's 75% of so-called Catholics don't believe in the real presence.
Well, and how many of them have returned to Mass?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So,
I mean,
I would say most of them have not. Well, most of them were not going to Mass in the first place. But the ones that don't believe in the real presence didn't return. And I actually have an observation here. This is a little bit off topic, but they're youth. So you always talk about inspiring the youth. And the Novus Ordo is not inspiring to the youth, but some of them stick around. Like, you'll see some of them stick around in the Catholic faith even after they graduate from high school and stuff, just because they say, well, it's a good thing, and they haven't really studied into their faith. But the shutdown, and the bishop saying, oh, you're not obligated to attend Mass.
Yeah.
How many, and I personally have known a number of them who use as an excuse not to go back to Mass. They basically have left the faith, but they're still going to Mass because they're minors and their parents make them. But then with the shutdown, now they have no exposure to the faith whatsoever. So a priest in a sermon could have said, like, these things are mortal sins, and it could have woken them up and said, oh wow, I'm living my life in sin. But they're not going to have that because they haven't been attending Mass for over a year.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in my own, with my own people that I know, that these people are lost, and these youth are lost, and it's going to take something to bring them back, but it's not going to be, the Novus Ordo evangelization. So
I don't know. You said it was Brett sent us that article. I think it came from Canon 212 that talked about Ireland and said that half of all those who used to attend Mass before the virus now don't attend after the virus. So there went half of the Novus Ordos in Ireland. I don't even know how many people go to Mass. I had a friend who a couple years ago, he lived in Limerick, and I actually went to visit him in Limerick, and he kind of drove me around, told me the whole scene or whatever. But this was in 2011, and he said at that time, basically nobody goes to church here besides old ladies. He says you have these beautiful churches, but they've all put their Cranmer table or their Luther table in them. The only people who attend are a couple old ladies. They have no vocations. Nobody really believes. And they were actually, I think at that time, they were probably closing or conglomerating parishes. And that was 2011. And since then, they've had even more sex scandals. Since then, they've had a virus. So it is, they're just, I can't imagine a country that is imploding faster than Ireland. They might hit rock bottom faster than even France or Netherlands or whatever. It's so bad there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you speak of Limerick, because that was the Institute of Christ the King is in Limerick.
Yeah, they're there. Yeah,
church.
It is. Yeah, and they're getting a lot of people there. I don't know if they're getting, I think they're probably getting some people to come back, but I bet they're poaching a lot of people from, horrible Novus Ordos. But yeah. I think that the faith will be restored through those traditional Latin Mass communities in Ireland. It won't be restored from the Novus Ordo. You can forget that. So whether it's Institute of Christ the King, or whether it's monasteries, or whether it's SSPX, that's where the faith that continues to cling on, it will cling on in those traditionalist communities.
Yeah, and I did like watching their video streams of their masses, because no matter what time I woke up in the morning,
yeah,
even if I woke up super early, they're like what 5 hours ahead. We discussed this, and so I could stream. It wasn't live, but I could stream their videos. They've already posted their Sunday mass. So that was a really convenient aspect of that.
And you know what I liked about them, and this was so good, is that this is not an offense against the Irish, but the chaplains there are French, and so they don't have all the baggage and the culture of being Irish, which has the culture of, let's say, mass in 15 minutes and go away. You know, the French in the Institute of Christ the King are very Baroque. They want to have the nicest thing. They're devoted to St. Francis de Sales, so they go out there and preach this sermon about, you know, affections and being outgoing and sociable and attracting people to the faith with honey and sweets. And so that's why I'm really, really glad. And that's what they need in Ireland. You need French. I think you need French missionaries to go and re-Catholicize Ireland, because I think they're sufficiently different than the people there that they'll have an effect, and they'll be able to capture people.
Yeah, this is interesting. Patty says his sister was turned away on Pentecost. That's pretty sad.
So she tried to go to mass and they wouldn't let her in.
Yes, that's what it seems like.
Yeah, either because of, who knows, virus, or probably masks, or who knows what.
Yeah, so I do want to ask just real quickly about the SSPX, people that are hesitant to attend the SSPX. A little bit of
so
a
wait a minute.
topic.
So you're saying there's people who are jab hesitant, and then there's people who are SSPX hesitant. You know what we need to do? We need to go door to door. I'll pretend to be Joe Biden. We're going to go door to door, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get you to go to an SSPX mass. Okay, we'll sign you up. We'll give you a $500 bonus. As a matter of fact, pretty soon you won't even be able to go into a restaurant unless you get the SSPX, you know, injection. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
No, but for the people that are hesitant to attend an SSPX mass, I guess, like, what would you say to them, Ryan, the retrograde? What would you say to these people that are hesitant? Because I guess the biggest objection is, like, well, the people that haven't studied it, they say, okay, well, are they under the Pope? And clearly, yes. They have irregular status, so that people are uncomfortable about that. And then the last point is the excommunications of the bishops. But how would you convince, or not convince, but like, what would you say to someone who's asking if they could attend an SSPX mass, and you know, if they're just hesitant, like, I guess what would help them to be more comfortable with attending an SSPX mass?
Well, I think the one thing is you have to question them and say, like, well, why are you hesitant? So that's the first question. One thing that you mentioned is, are they or are they not under the Pope? Well, it sort of depends. Okay, so what does that mean? And what's the significance of that? And again, let's take a look at who is under the Pope. And that would be Father James Martin, Becciu, Tomato Supich, Gregory, and whatnot. They're all under the Pope. So being under the Pope is not necessarily a touchstone of orthodoxy, because there's rotten guys under the Pope, and then there's really good guys like Bishop Schneider and Mustarts, and, you know, everybody in our Latin Mass community, you know. So we're under the Pope. So, but really, what difference does that make? Because I think the question you need to ask is, are you a Roman Catholic that believes everything that the Church teaches and binds you to hold? Do you believe in all the creeds of the Catholic Church, all the sacraments, the entire Scripture tradition, and the magisterium? And the answer is, for every Catholic, go down through that LGBTQAWXYZ list that I made. Every Catholic believes in everything that the Church teaches. I don't care whether you're indult or sedevacantist. You're going to believe all the creeds of the Church and all the magisterial actions. You're going to. So that's the thing that matters. That's what saves you, is orthodox belief. Okay. Now the question about the excommunications. Well, that's already been answered by Pope Benedict, that he did away with all that stuff. Okay. So SSPX said they weren't excommunicated, and they made a good argument. Father, who's the priest in the papal posse, Father Gerald Murray, he wrote He wrote a master's or a PhD dissertation in canon law to argue why the Archbishop Lefebvre was actually never excommunicated. So, and that was accepted. So he has a really good argument there. Furthermore, that was all whitewashed by Pope Benedict and said it never happened, and there's no problem there. The other question is, well, what does Pope Francis have to say? If you believe in Pope Francis, okay, he says it's okay to go to the SSPX because he told him the only question had ever been their marriages and their marriages and their confessions, and he removed all doubt about the validity of those sacraments because he gave them jurisdiction. So Schneider mentioned this. And then the Pope obviously gave them permission as far as the marriages to also do a wedding mass. And according to the cardinals on the Ecclesia Dei Commission, everything, they already had permission to do masses. So all of these objections, from whom do they come? Well, they certainly don't come from people of authority in the church. They come from people like Church Militant and people at Catholic Answers and whatnot, who all are Opus Dei agents. And they want you to stay within the Opus Dei regime so they get your money, rather the Scientology scheme, rather than going out and going to wherever else it might be, the traditional Latin Mass celebrated by who knows. So, okay, I guess that kind of answered those objections. I don't attend an SSPX chapel. I have before. I went one time, and okay, whatever, great. I went there because it was closer than the Novus. I was in another city. I was actually in Los Angeles, and the SSPX chapel had mass at, I think it was like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. or something. And the Fraternity of St. Peter, they were saying mass in some basement of a church at like 7 p.m. And it was the whole other side of town. I said, I'm not playing this game. I'll go to SSPX. And I went there and received communion, and it was just like any other traditional Latin Mass chapel, okay? So it's not like some kind of like where you go in there and it's a Star Wars Cantina band playing and people have huge noses and pointy ears and whatever, like bizarre things. It's a Latin Mass. They're just like every other Catholic too. And, I could probably make the same argument about Sedevacantists or whatever. It's a Catholic. They're Catholics, okay? They might have disputes about what Vatican II is and who's Pope and who's not Pope or whatever this stuff is. But the main question here, what saves your soul, is fidelity to what Christ has revealed. And it comes through two streams, Scripture and tradition, distilled through the magisterium of the church. So again, as you said, I remember you said this at Sunday, you said, oh yeah, I believe all the dogmas and anathemas that Vatican II defined.
You take the Vatican II Pledge of Allegiance, put your hand over your heart and say, I pledge allegiance to Vatican II and all its doctrines, and all its anathemas.
And all its anathemas. So help me God. Amen.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned jurisdiction in the SSPX. So Pope Francis did grant them jurisdiction, and the bishops, they were granted...
He gave them the necessary jurisdiction globally for confessions and marriages. As far as the other sacraments, that's either going to be a supplied jurisdiction or they get permission from diocesan bishops to do ordinations. Bishop Fillet, Bishop Fillet said that there's a majority of dioceses have given him permissions to do ordinations in their diocese, not for diocesan men, but for men who are of the diocese who attend SSPX. The diocesan bishops have given them permission. So this business about there being a schism is 100% hoax. Okay, it is a lie. It is a lie perpetrated by the devil and the modernists. It's not even the modernists. A lie perpetrated by the devil and the opie-dopey Opus Deis, the Opus Dei Scientology industry. I don't know. We tried to do a show on that. We can't get to the bottom of it, why the opie-dopey Scientology movement is so diametrically opposed to SSPX, but they are. And I can tell you that it's lies. Even listen to the mainstream Novus Ordo Bergoglian Church, and they have no problem with SSPX, period.
I have a feeling. Well, one point I want to make is that for marriages in the SSPX, they ask you asked your diocesan bishop for permission for marriage. So like
Okay.
you should go through. I think in some of the dioceses, like the SSPX encourages you to go through the diocesan marriage process.
Oh, that's strange. Okay,
That's,
whatever.
yeah, well, so that's I mean, it's basically just like working with the diocese.
Yeah, you'll probably get miseducated because, you know, I talked to some people that just got married. I guess it was 2 years ago, and they were telling me, they were like, "Yeah, we went there, and honest to goodness, we were the only believing Catholics there. First off,
Yeah.
everybody was shacked up. Everybody believed in contraception, and the priest was an indifferentist. The priest, or maybe it was a deacon, actually came out there and said, "Oh yeah, we really don't care if you're a Jew or a Muslim or a Catholic or a Protestant. You know, we're all good people, and all are welcome. All are welcome. All are welcome in this marriage prep. Doesn't even matter what you believe. Who cares whether you believe it's a sacrament or not, apparently." Yeah. So again, that's Novus Ordo Church. Let me ask you something. Is that quote unquote under the Pope? If somebody denies the Eucharist, if somebody denies the Eucharist or believes in the rainbow agenda, is that quote unquote under the Pope? What does this even mean? Yeah. Again, people need to start thinking about this stuff when they're focused on, oh, is he under the Pope? How about, do you actually believe in Christ and the Catholic faith? You know, there's basically Arians. There's Arians and all sorts of flavors of heretics who are under the Pope. Okay, maybe even Bergoglio himself is one of these heretics. Is he under the Pope? I don't know. Who's Pope? I don't know. Nobody knows anything. But I know what the Catholic faith is, because it's the tradition that's handed down in the Bible, Scripture tradition, the traditional catechisms, the fathers of the church, and the liturgy. That's how we know what the Catholic faith is. It doesn't come to us from like the latest decrees from the Secretary of State of the Vatican or the Dicastery for Communications or the Commission on Ecumenism or you know, migrant relations or whatever. That's not Catholicism. That's not. That is some kind of New World Order apparatus.
All right, yeah, and then the final question on the SSPX is, do you think they will be excommunicated in the near future?
Within the next...
Proprio.
What?
Considering the motu proprio, so like within the next 2 or 3 years.
No, there's no way they'll be excommunicated in the next 2 or 3 years. The only thing that would get them excommunicated would be consecrating another bishop without a papal mandate, and they're not going to do that because, remember, I sent you you and Brett the dates. Okay, they still have Bishop Tissier 75, but they still have Gallaretta and Fillet who are 65. They've got 10 more years until quote unquote mandatory retirement age. They're going to outlive Bergoglio, and they could even outlive Bergi's successor. So they're not going to do any consecrations because they think with this disaster, this dumpster fire that's going on in Rome, that there's a good chance that things are either going to completely break up or they're going to get a lot better under the next pontificate. And then they'll be able to basically, you know, I don't want to say come back, but more or less Rome, the Vatican, let's just call it the Vatican, will give up its apostasy and re-embrace the Catholic faith. I mean, you really got to get in there with the next pope has to go in there with a tourniquet, not even a scalpel to like remove diseased tissue, but he's got to get out like the bandsaw and the hacksaw and the like meat saw and chop off huge limbs like Germany, okay, and Ireland. I mean, there's got to be a lot of chopping to get rid of these diseased members, and once that happens, well then, you know, the SSPX. Keep this in mind. The SSPX can be reincorporated with a full canonical status like this. All that the Pope has to do is just snap his fingers and say, like, oh, recite the Nicene Creed, and they're back. Or say that the Pope has supreme, you know, authority and all this stuff, confess Vatican I, which they believe already, and they get a piece of paper that says that you have this canonical status. Schneider talked about this. The whole thing about them being outside the church and not having a jurisdiction is 100% hoax. And people need to understand that the only thing that's preventing them from having the canonical status is the Pope just snapping his fingers and giving them a piece of paper. Okay, it's that piece of paper that James Martin and Monsignor Burrell have, but Society of St. Pius X doesn't have that piece of paper. So I don't know. Maybe they need to get on Grindr. If they got a Grindr profile, okay, maybe they would get the canonical status. I don't know.
Well, speaking of that, we'll take this final question here before we end the show from our friend Derek. He wants you to repeat the acronym that you use. So thanks for tuning in, Derek, and thank you everyone for tuning into the live stream. I see. I think it's 23 people. Who knows? But
yeah, here's the acronym. LGBTQRSIA+. L is for Lefebvrist. That's an SSPX person. G is for a general trad. That's somebody who goes to Fraternity of St. Peter or Institute of Christ the King. B is for bi-ritual. That's somebody who goes to both Byzantine and the traditional Latin Mass. T is for trans-ritual. That's if you were like born Byzantine and converted to Roman, or you were born Roman and converted to Byzantine, or you were assigned at birth Novus Ordo, and then you kind of discovered you had traditionalist leanings and embraced the Latin Mass. You're like trans-ritual. Q is questioning, where you question whether Francis is Pope. Is Benedict Pope? Is there no Pope? Okay. R is for the resistance movement of Bishop Williamson. S is for the Sedevacantist. I is for the indult, which means basically like a diocesan Latin Mass parish. A is for an ally. So that's somebody who, while they might not be a traditionalist, they maybe go to the Novus Ordo or whatever, they have sympathies. They don't attend Latin Mass, but they like Latin Mass people. They have Latin Mass friends. They think the Pope should leave the Latin Mass alone, and that it's a good thing. That's the ally. And then, of course, there's a plus, because there could be any kind of whatever it is, Siri thesis. Okay, we could do a whole show on Siri thesis. I didn't even mention beneficantism. That's a plus in there. Apparently, there's some flavor of sedevacantism that says like Innocent III was the last pope in the year like 1000 and something. Apparently, those people are like Western Rite Orthodox or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, so there's the acronym, Derek.
All right. Well, that was a great show, great discussion. Thank you so much, Ryan. Now, if you're watching this video after the live stream, then leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Thunder and Lightning Show. We are the laity.
And we will not be silent.